All right, drafting a rookie quarterback or not? That is the question. Many people, including myself, would love to have a franchise quarterback. The reality is sometimes the franchise quarterback's not there. And sometimes you think one quarterback is elite and you end up just settling for another one. You end up with Ryan Leaf. You end up with Rick Meyer. You end up with Zach Wilson. The list goes on and on. There's not often franchise quarterbacks available. There is no guarantee uh, that a quarterback is going to be available when it comes to the draft. So we'll get into this. I know a lot of you saw the background. Look, the browser's been jacked up. All of a sudden stopped working. So now I had to go back to the Firefox days. So we're good. Not a effort thing or anything like that. It's just funny. It is the number one source though for Texans digital content. I'm Landry Locker. Just throw in the questions. We'll make this as interactive as we can, as we always do on my Windows 3.11. At least give me Windows 5. So here we go. Let's talk about veteran quarterback options, and let's pretend that we all set our rookie quarterback crap aside that we've been talking about for a long time, and we decide that the Houston Texans are going to take a defensive player number 2, whether it's Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. If that happens, hypothetically, I'm a Bryce Or Bust guy. You guys are, some of you are CJ Stroud guys, some of you are Will Levis guys, some of you are AR-15 Anthony Richardson guys. What veteran quarterback would you be open to, and would it make sense for both sides? Let's start with Jimmy G. Jimmy G, very popular choice. At Landry Locker on Twitter. Jimmy Garoppolo, I think he got maybe 20% of the votes. Second most popular name, in large part because of his ties to Nick Caserio, his ties to DeMeco Ryans. Only question I have is, are you sure DeMeco Ryans thinks much of Jimmy Garoppolo? Are you sure? Because the Jimmy Garoppolo I saw with DeMeco Ryans cost him a Super Bowl. The organization was so desperate to replace him, they traded a haul for a guy who played one game the year before at North Dakota State. That guy then got hurt, and they brought back Jimmy G. Plus, he always gets hurt, as Mikey D brings up. Keep the comments coming in. Subscribe, like as well, and download the Odyssey app. Listen to In the Loop. He gets hurt all the time. So I don't know whether they like him that much. He definitely can't stay healthy. And from his perspective, though, he's not going to have a lot of options. He was on the market last year. He had the shoulder injury. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have a lot of options. Someone who is going to have a lot of options is Derek Carr. Derek Carr, Brandon Simpson says, Carr would be the only guy I know kick the wheels on, but again, we won't be drafting the QB next year. Plus, we aren't ready to win right now. I think that Derek Carr would be the best option if you're trying to win immediately. Assuming you're not going to trade a haul for Aaron Rodgers. We're leaving Aaron Rodgers out of this because Aaron Rodgers ain't coming to the Texans. But Derek Carr is going to have options. And in his situation, it's not like the head coaching job where it's the most appealing gig on the market. And you can think 3 years down the line, and you can think draft picks and all that. Derek Carr wants to win now. He wants to win a Super Bowl. He wants to be in the best position to win a Super Bowl. There's going to be teams that on paper, again, you never know, but on paper are closer to filling those desires than the Texans. Never know what's going to happen when they play, but whether it's Titans, whether it's the Colts with the healthy Jonathan Taylor back, whether it's Tampa Bay, he sees that division and thinks he can just basically fill in for Tom Brady and throw to those guys, kind of revive them a little bit, whether it's the Saints. Think Derek Carr would be the most popular option. I don't think it's going to make sense for his perspective. But if you want to win, I would say of all the realistic options, we're not doing Aaron Rodgers. I didn't put Lamar Jackson on here either. I don't feel like playing Madden and doing EA Sports. I don't think Baltimore's going to let that happen. I don't think the Texans are going to give up what it would take to get Lamar. But I also don't think Derek Carr makes sense here. I don't think it's going to cost much to get Derek Carr either. He basically gets to choose his destination. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he just got flat out released and got to figure out a situation, because who the hell is taking on that contract? Sam Darnold's the next one. A lot of people make really, really nasty faces when you mention the name Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold's going to be a backup somewhere. I don't think anyone's going to let Sam Darnold be their starting quarterback. So, I mean, if you're talking about the Texans signing a backup and they want to unload the 6 to 10 or whatever to get an elite backup quarterback, have at it. Sam Darnold's your guy, but I don't think they're going to at all entertain the possibility of Sam Darnold being the starting QB. I think he's a backup. So hell no on Sam. Jarrett Stidham's the other one. The son-in-law of former Rockets president Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham had a few flashes for the Raiders at the end of the season. He does know Nick Caserio. Nick Caserio drafted him, but assuming that they might be leaning more towards the Shanahan offense, that's not the system he knows. He's been running that Raiders system his entire career. He was that's the only offense he knows. So I could see Jarrett Stidham, if someone's going to like overpay for him. Could the Titans do that? Like, could the Titans move on from Tannehill and go with Jarrett Stidham? I mean, I'm just trying to think like system fits. He could be back with the Raiders as a backup. I don't see Stidham as an option. I'm not very high on him. Cooper Rush did a good job holding it down with the Cowboys this year, but I don't think, I mean, if you trust Cooper Rush to be a starting quarterback, I mean, I don't think that would be, I don't even think that's going to be a realistic thing. And quite frankly, I don't know how much better he would be over the course of a season than Davis Mills. Crazy as that sounds. Another name, this is a system fit. I saw Texans Cat bring him up the other day. Kind of got roasted a little bit. Jacoby Brissett. Probably should have been a Pro Bowler over Snoop Huntley, quite honestly, if they were going to, just hand things out. Jacoby Brissett held it down pretty nicely last year. And he's another guy. I could see Jacoby Brissett ending up being backup quarterback somewhere that makes, $10 million. And I don't know. Help me out. I don't know too many backup quarterbacks better than Jacoby Brissett. He might be the most intriguing guy on this list. Now, he's not as mobile as he once was, but you could do a lot worse than Jacoby Brissett as a placeholder, mentor, whatever. So I actually, if we're practicing this from the they aren't going to draft a quarterback angle, you could sell me on Jacoby Brissett. Daniel Jones, Lamar Jackson, and Geno Smith. Those are like the Madden names that come up. I think they did an excellent job with Daniel Jones with the Giants, but I'm not a guy that is the biggest Daniel Jones fan. And I don't think, I think you have a decent idea of what he is. I don't think the ceiling's that high. I don't think the best is ahead. I think we might have seen the best last year. Mark that. He could end up completely flipping the switch and making me look dumb. Lamar Jackson, you're not going to trade that much for Lamar. Love Lamar, but use the draft picks, spend the money, develop a full team. And then Geno Smith, not realistic. He's going to stay in Seattle. So that's where we're at on that. Now, Davis Mills. All signs come back to Davis Mills. And I know what you're saying. Davis Mills is not a franchise quarterback. You're correct. You are 100% correct. But is Davis Mills in year 3 is he really much worse of an option than the options that we just laid out? And keep in mind, most of those options are going to cost you some money. Is Davis Mills really a worse option than Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Garrett Stidham? And you got to factor in money. You also got to factor in the fact that you do have 2 draft picks the next year. I'm not saying tank. Hell, people were talking about Daniel Jones the same way that they are Davis Mills right now. I can see Hanny and Rob said he sucks. I agree. When it comes to being a franchise quarterback, I would say you are correct. He sucks in that area. But as a stopgap, saying the same stuff about Daniel Jones. If you bring in the right offensive coordinator, again, I'm not in favor of it. How much worse of an option is Davis Mills? I don't think it's as far of a drop off as many believe. And it makes me sick to think about watching that last year. But nah, I am. With Davis Mills, I definitely put him ahead of Garoppolo. Derek Carr, no. If you're trying to win and Derek Carr wants to come here and you didn't draft the rookie, Derek Carr is Davis Mills, but I would put Davis Mills up there when you factor in contract, when you factor in just holding it down, like you use like the Daniel Jones example. I'll put Davis Mills right below Derek Carr. Mike White's being brought up. Ran the offensive system, so he's familiar with it, assuming that that's the system they're going to run. Decent job in New York last year. He was better. He was better than Zach Wilson, I should say. I would rather have Davis. I would rather have Davis. And I am not a fan of that. Circling back though, the draft, the quarterbacks, the rookies. I'm starting to look at this thing and I'm starting to play a little bit of chess here. And I appreciate y'all playing along on the veteran QBs. It is the Locker Room on YouTube, #1 most consistent daily source of Texans digital content. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 610 in the loop. I'm starting to wonder, like, if the way in which this thing is shaping up when it comes to coaching hires and it comes to the draft, I'm starting to wonder if the Colts are going to hire Shane Steichen. And another one of the candidates that was on the it is tough for me to say. That is 100. It is tough for me to say Davis Mills. Yes, it is. But I think the Colts right now are in position to where the longer this thing goes on, and I talked to Kevin Bowen, who works out there, one of the best at covering the squad. I asked him, like, what the hell's going on there? You've interviewed like 500 guys. What are we thinking here? Is it going to go back to Saturday? And then Irsay put out his tweet that said, hey, we're going to take days, not hours. It's a drawn out process. Look, if they wanted to get the process done at this point, it would be done. Like, what are they waiting for? Like, is he trying to be able to say that he had the most extensive search and they ended up on Saturday? Or could they be waiting for someone who's actually coaching right now? And if that's the case, Shane Steichen would be the guy. And I promise I'll circle this back to the Texans because all I do is localize it. But so let's pretend that Shane Steichen is that guy. Chris Ballard probably wants some sort of compromise with Jim Irsay. Hell, Chris Ballard might like Shane Steichen. A lot of Texans fans liked Shane Steichen. But Chris Ballard could get his offensive guy in Shane Steichen. And Jim Irsay, who likes everything to be romantic, like he likes to live in the past and he likes to feel like he's doing something that can kind of connect him to what the Indianapolis Colts, used to be, the glory days. You think it's possible that Jim Irsay looks at Nick Sirianni as the one that got away? Like, while he was getting frustrated with Frank Reich and pissed off at Frank Reich for hiring Carson or bringing in Carson Wentz, and then bringing in Matt Ryan. Do you think it's possible that Jim Irsay said to himself ever, man, that Nick Sirianni, who was our offensive coordinator for a few years, he's the one that got away? I think it's possible. So you go get his offensive coordinator, who, by the way, has worked with multiple quarterbacks, Justin Herbert and now Jalen Hurts, both had their best seasons with him, at least the rating of Herbert. You think it's possible Irsay wants that and they have like some sort of compromise and they hire Shane Steichen? I think it's possible. And if they do that, then what quarterback do you think Shane Steichen would like? That's where I think it gets relevant for the Texans when it comes to drafting a quarterback. Which quarterback do you think they like? The Colts. If they want to hop, let's pretend the Colts are going to hop the Texans and they're going to go to number 1. And if you're a CJ Stroud guy, you're saying, I hope they draft Bryce Young. If you're a Bryce Young guy, you're saying, I hope they draft CJ Stroud. If you're a Will Levis guy, bless your heart. I feel sorry for you. But either way, if you don't think they're going to take the quarterback that you want, which one do you think they're going to take? Which quarterback do you think the Indianapolis Colts take? You could say, well, Shane Steichen's worked with Jalen Hurts for a couple of years. Maybe he wants somebody that can run that type of system. And people will immediately say, okay, well, that's Bryce Young. I don't necessarily think that's Bryce Young with that system. I mean, I know that people look at Bryce Young and they might assume that he's not really, he's more of a pocket passer. So I wonder if it would be Will Levis because Chris Ballard likes traits. And Shane Steichen has worked with Justin Herbert. He's worked with Jalen Hurts. I think that's where we need to start looking if we're talking about the dominoes or you're thinking of the Texans and what quarterback they're going to take. Because I think the best hire Indianapolis could make right now would be Shane Steichen. I think they're waiting for something for a reason. And it could come down to who does Shane Steichen like, who do the Colts like, and what's going to happen. Or they could just hire Jeff Saturday and we could all be happy. But I think that's definitely something to keep in mind. No doubt. No doubt. A couple of comments here. Marquise talking about Christian Kirksey. If he's still on the team, do you think he could be placed in a DN role? Man, he would get swallowed as a DN. I don't think he can. I don't even like him playing linebacker, but as a DN, Kirksey, man, that would be rough. Carlos, if can't get Carr for cheap, stay with Mills and add some talent to the team and see what happens. Mills might be a different player under D'Amico. He could be a different player. I don't subscribe to the theory that, Davis Mills is some sort of, victim and we need to look at him. He's not a franchise quarterback. Was he put in position to maximize what he was? No, probably not. He didn't have a good coordinator. He didn't have a good cast around him, but you can still show some things and at least show some sort of sign that you're going to be a franchise quarterback. Davis Mills is not that. But yeah, he can. I think everyone's going to play better under D'Amico. Give Cooks to get number 1. I don't know if the Bears want Cooks. They probably could use some weapons for Justin Fields, but I don't know that they're going to want Brandon Cooks. I will say I heard it on pretty good authority from someone that they believe he has played his final snap as a Texan. Now, this is just screw it. McLean told me that. He texted me. So he's probably going to say it at some point on the radio. So screw it. McLean texted me and said that because he had disagreed today. And then after the meeting, this is the kind of stuff that I'll tell you when I'm on the channel. And I'll say it on the show tomorrow too. But McLean texted me. We had a conversation about Cooks. And then he texted me and said, yeah, I think you're right. Cooks is not going to be a Houston Texan moving forward. So I said, okay, cool. Appreciate you. And wonder who the hell you talk to. That I don't know. And that I wouldn't snitch like that. But yeah, that's what he said. And we'll talk about it next week. We'll talk about it now. So I think Cooks is gone. I don't think Chicago is going to want Brandon Cooks for one spot. So yeah. So I think it's I think it's safe to say he's done. I think it was probably reasonable to begin with. Anything can happen, but I don't think this is like like it's easy to say, well, sometimes business gets in the way. That wasn't business the way that he handled it. I thought that was a little bit ridiculous. I just don't trust the guy. I don't trust the guy. Brandon Cooks. And I think maybe you can get some value for him at this point because the receiver market is so bad. And I think he's kind of committed to getting out. Maybe he would even switch up the contract. So, as far as like what the cost, like, would you be willing? I want to see the comments. Like, would you be willing to jump up? And only people who will who just really really like a quarterback. Let's say you like whoever you like. Would you be willing? And let's assume Indy likes the same guy. What would your price be to move up to one? Because I might give up a couple threes, maybe a 2 next year or something like that. I don't want to give up the 2 this year because I think it's just way too important. I think it's way too prime of a spot to get a receiver or a running back. That's what I would do. I would give up maybe a 2, a 3 and a 2 next year or something. I think Chicago really just wants to get their second round pick back. I think that's what Chicago wants because they traded the first pick now of the second round. They got one for Roquan. They got a second, but they gave that up for Claypool. So they might want to get something there back. Or they might just want to maximize assets. You never know. Another popular talking point has been the running back. And hypothetically speaking, if you were at 12 and Bijan Robinson fell to you, would you be willing to take Bijan Robinson with that number 12 pick? I would. I think when you have extra draft picks, I think that it's an incredibly reasonable decision to draft a running back when you have those extra assets. We saw Jacksonville do it. The example I always use is Jacksonville with Travis Etienne. We often point to like, running backs and they've been so devalued that now people are assuming that the running back, you can just find these guys. But what's funny about that is like all the examples that are used, and I'll just give you a stat. Could I interest you in a stat real quick? The eight highest rushing running backs this year in the NFL, the eight highest running backs, the average ADP, like the ADP average draft position was 29th. So it's not like any of these guys that we talk about that are like guys that fill in. It's not like they're just setting the league on fire. The average draft position was 29th. Josh Jacobs, first round pick. Derrick Henry, second round pick. Nick Chubb, second round pick. Saquon Barkley, first round pick. Miles Sanders, second round pick. Dalvin Cook, second round pick. Christian McCaffrey, first round pick. And then they traded basically a half draft to acquire him. Travis Etienne, first round pick. Then you have Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. But even there, if you look at Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, the Packers had Aaron Jones, but they still drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round. So it's not like these teams are just not going in on running backs. Sometimes because there's so many opportunities, the running backs get hurt. Like Jamal Williams was 11th in the league in rushing. Well, they also have DeAndre Swift, who's a hell of a player. After that, you have Kenneth Walker, who was a second-round pick last year. So the value of running backs is there. You're going to have examples of guys that have done well, but I just laid it out for you that the Kansas City Chiefs, they have basically a rookie that no one thought anything of last year, and McKinnon and a journeyman holding down their running game. But they did use a first-round pick on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, it didn't work out, so the running back weasels will say, well, that's why you don't take a running back. But they don't say that when there's another bust. Like if a wide receiver sucks or a tight end sucks, you never hear Well, that's why you don't take a tight end, or that's why you don't take, tackle. They just say it about the running back. It's weird. And if the Chiefs had taken Jonathan Taylor, or they taken J.K. Dobbins, was it really a bad pick? I think you got to stock up on running back. San Francisco, we talk about the Elijah Mitchell thing that D'Amico Ryans mentioned. The other thing that he didn't mention was that they used a third-round pick on Trey Sermon before that. Didn't work out, but they used that. And even when they had Elijah Mitchell holding it down, what did the San Francisco 49ers do? I know they didn't use a first-round pick on a running back, but they traded a half a draft for one, and they got into the NFC Championship game because of it. That was a big help for Brock Purdy. I know Brock Purdy gets the credit, but they traded half of a draft for it. So if Bijan Robinson, and I think I saw Zerline's mock draft, he had him falling to freaking Buffalo. Like if the Texans just had one pick and it was 12th, I think the case against Bijan Robinson is really strong. And I hear all of the hesitation to take it back there. But when you have the extra pick and these guys make immediate impacts, and furthermore, you have a running back who you gave the ball to 220 times or whatever through 13 games last year, and he got injured. He got banged up. Now, he wouldn't have missed 4 games had they been in the mix, but he got banged up. Only had 320 whatever carries in 4 years at Florida. You need a 1A, 1B, just like a lot of these teams need. So because of all those things, I think it just makes sense. He also could help in the passing game. So I'm if he falls to you, then I would take him at 12. And Zerline had him at 4. I think 4 overall. He has him as the 4th best player. Ted brings up that there's a lot of running backs available later in the draft. How late are we going? Because that's my question. How late are we going? I mean, yeah, you're going to find some backs. I mean, you keep 4 or 5 on your roster, and these guys get hurt. So there's going to be more opportunity. But we start like talking about these running backs. You could do that. You could do that with tight ends. You could do that with tackles. You could do that with ends. You do it with a lot of people. But of course, there's going to be more running backs that you find that contribute in the draft. They play more. There's more snaps. There's more opportunities. So yeah, and they can make immediate impacts. I just don't know, like, as far as like good running backs available later, like if you want to go to the second round, you want to start talking about Gibbs, A-Chain, you want to go to the third, talk about Deuce Vaughn. I would take Bijan Robinson, and I would still take running backs in day 2 or 3. That's how much I think of running backs. I think you need as many as possible. I think the Texans need to overcompensate for their neglect of the running back position. But if they want to take a receiver at 12, I don't know who. I'm seeing some guys who don't even have first round grades on wide receivers right now. I don't even know. I think in the Lance mock he said that he didn't have. It was on NFL.com. He didn't have a wide receiver 1, but he had the Texans taking Jalen Hyatt. I mean, one of these guys will probably surprise you, but I mean, there could be it's going to be really interesting when the wide receiver market goes, because there's going to be a run. I just think the run could come way earlier than you think it could, from like 10 to 20 or later. But I think the run's going to come like at the end of the first round, and then on day 2, I think we're going to see a lot of wide receivers taken, because there's a hell of a lot of value there. So I don't know. I don't know if at 12 you take a wide receiver, but I mean, if you do believe that Brandon Cooks is gone, you don't necessarily trust Nico Collins. You got to think in some way, shape, or form they sign a wide receiver or draft a wide receiver. It's just gonna be interesting. They're gonna. I definitely think there's going to be a lot of attention paid to the offense, for sure. Ted said he was talking about Gibbs and Vaughn. Okay, so you're not going that late. We're not going to start using like the the 6th, 7th round examples or anything like that. So yeah, you're not going too late. So I could see that. Do wonder if they go defense though at 12 too. Now maybe that depends on if they go quarterback, because if they don't go quarterback at 2, I mean it's pretty safe to say they're going to go defense. They're going to get one of those guys. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. A lot of people are mentioning Keenan Allen. I don't know who. Once the free agency shapes up, we'll get more into that type of thing. But you talk about someone who, man, he just doesn't seem like he can stay on the field. Keenan Allen. So I would probably tap the brakes on that. Chris is talking about Joey Porter Jr. I just do they need to draft another corner? I mean, at 12, that seems kind of risky if you're gonna do that at 12. Um, the wide receiver position, you do have Mechie coming back. I don't know what to expect from him. I'll be honest. Mechie is slot guy. He does have chemistry with Bryce Young. If you bring in Bryce Young, maybe those two kind of connect. But I don't think we can, I've seen like some mentions of wide receivers, and a lot of people have said, "Oh yeah, Mechie's coming in. You don't have to worry about that." And you start listing guys. I don't know what's up with Mechie. Just when I go to camp, just seeing John Mechie out there stretching, that's a blessing. And we'll see what happens. And I'm sure when he goes out there, start getting more and more excited. But I'm not going to place any like expectations on a guy who just had cancer and tore his ACL before that. Would it shock me if he was a good player? Probably not, but not really expecting it. And I don't think they should approach the offseason as if they just got the slot on lock. I heard a discussion about, or saw a discussion about Addison at 12. And it was, well, Mechie's got the slot. You don't take him. Come on. If you think Addison's the best receiver in the draft and you know that you need a receiver, and he primarily, some people think, is going to line up in the slot in the NFL, but he can also line up outside, and you don't draft him because of Mechie, I just don't think that. Look, there's plenty of balls to go around and you can still figure out some stuff, but we don't know what's going to happen with Mechie, and we don't know. I mean, he's in good, like, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen on the football field. He's definitely in like good physical shape, but he's still going through all types of stuff. So if you think Addison's good, like you don't ignore the top receiver, which would be around the range of the top receiver for that. I just don't think that. I don't think that's realistic. And we'll see what happens. The tight end is being brought up at 12. Mayer out of Notre Dame is the guy that everyone talks about. You also got some intriguing guy, the big tight end out of Georgia, and then my man out of Utah, which we'll get more into. We'll dive into the tight ends. Probably talk to John Harris or someone like that about that. But tight ends at 12, like if you're don't take a running back at 12, I don't know how you could possibly be. And I don't see any examples of it, but if you want to talk about position value and you want to start listing like this tight end was found here, you could probably do a damn show on that type of thing. I think Kelsey was a 3rd round pick. Gronk was 2nd. Joe Nathan's asking about Bowers in the draft next year at Georgia. Man, they've been talking about Bowers forever, huh? It's pretty crazy that he's not even eligible for the draft this year. He's one of the guys that we get asked the most about at the show, on the show, and it's like, hey, he's not even allowed to to do this, to be in the draft. I think it's going to go to like, when is Bowers going to go? Is Bowers going to be one of those guys that they talk about being a top 10 pick? Is he one of those guys who falls to the back end of the 1st round and a team drafts him out of luxury? Is he one of those guys that's like on the Mel Kiper best available that slides into day 2? I think we'll just kind of have to see what the draft stock's going to be. But the way that they talk about him and the versatility, I mean, they're using him on sweeps and stuff like that. I don't see his value being much different than the top tight end this year. And in the top tight end this year, we're talking about Mayer, and they're talking about they have him mocking to 12. Now it's always really, really dangerous when you start talking about, what they're saying in mocks. But yeah, I think we're thinking wide receiver, maybe defense, or if Bijan falls in your lap, maybe you go in that direction. I do know that the character, um, you can't have better character than Bijan. That's another thing. Like, you talk about a guy who probably a top 5 player on most guys' boards, plays a position that makes immediate impact. Philadelphia Eagles have 2 first-round picks, might not even get to the Texans because of the trade they made with the Saints. I think there's a chance he doesn't even get there, but the character and the overall player, I don't think you can beat. And I think the Texans might like that, including D'Amico. So let's not just blame ownership and Nick Caserio. It's hard not to want to be around Bijan when you figure out what he's about. Travis B says, I hope we're aggressive in free agency. We could build a good chunk of the defense for D'Amico with when 180 mil we'll have available next year. I'm with you. I think they're going to be aggressive. I think they're going to be able to overpay because of all the first round picks they're going to have. I do wonder. I expect them to be at the very top of the center market. It's very thin, but they need a veteran center in the worst way, in a really, really bad way. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the position that they're studying the most, because the O-line is a really good center and a Kenyon Green bounce back season away from being pretty damn good. Really, really good. So I would look at center. Defense, there's a lot of names going around. We know the position. You can really, I think, outside of corner, I think they need a starting safety. They could definitely upgrade at linebackers, although I think we'll see some of the younger guys getting more snaps, like Cashman and stuff. And then the D-line, you can't have enough guys on the D-line at all. I do wonder if maybe you have, some veterans, much like Jerry Hughes signing that 2-year deal, but like some veterans that would like to come see what D'Amico is about, and play on his defense and serve as kind of leaders. Like, I know Fletcher Cox. Like, Fletcher Cox is from the South. Philadelphia already got rid of him, and then they signed him on a 1-year deal. They just drafted Jordan Davis. They're going to have to pay Jalen Hurts. They're going to have to pay a lot of people. If Fletcher Cox wants to, he's 33 right now, still playing pretty well. He wants to pull like a Jerry Hughes and, sign a short-term deal, play some ball, be one of the leaders on the team, maybe come down to the South. And would you sign Fletcher Cox, put him in the mix, kind of try to prolong that career? Less snaps? Maybe. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of names. We'll get more into free agency. And the crazy thing about that is you're going to have some cuts. You're going to have some cuts that'll open up more possibilities. Brown Chubby Bear, what are your thoughts on Marquand Manuel as DC? Him and Harris both getting looked at. I mean, I know he was with the Jets, and I remember watching him back in the day as a player. That's really all I know. I don't know what his style is. I'm assuming that he has the same philosophies as D'Amico Ryans. I know a lot of people got excited about the Chris Harris mic'd up. So there is that. Joseph Duke said Cox played with D'Amico in Philly. Facts. I actually had a segment today. If y'all want to check it out on the Odyssey app, Sports Radio 610. If you hear Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox talk about D'Amico Ryans, it's actually pretty wild. Fletcher credited him for finally realizing they needed to change his diet. He said that whenever he needed something on or off the field, he would go to D'Amico Ryans, just talked about what a leader he was. Brandon Graham basically said the same stuff. So that's why I'm mentioning like Fletcher Cox. Like, if he wants to still play, and let's say Philly wants to say goodbye, he wants to come south. I actually know I used to run around with Fletcher's one of Fletcher's good friends now, who he does car promotions with. God, we used to run around collecting things, autographs back in the day. Although he was he's a hustler. Jay Harp. J Harp Productions, but they race cars and stuff. I digress though. But Fletcher Cox, sure. Why not? If he wanted to come in here just on like a 1-year deal and be one of those veterans, because that's the other thing. The veterans like Fletcher Cox or Jerry Hughes coming in and being leaders and helping the young guys, that's cool. And I think the quality of that guy is actually going to go up with D'Amico Ryans, because I think it's going to be more fun to play with D'Amico. There's going to be a little bit more of a buzz. I think they're going to be a more competitive team. But, guys like Rex Burkhead, Kamu Grugier-Hill, Kirksey to a certain extent, like those guys that come in and lead the team, it's like, okay, like, are we over romanticizing this leadership at the sake of bringing in more talented guys that can contribute? Like, what is the real value? I hear about, what a great leader Rex Burkhead is. And I like Rex Burkhead. But is that value really worth having him as your number 2 running back? No, it's definitely not. So the quality of guy, the Fletcher Cox, people like that coming in to lead. Laramie Tunsil, I think Tunsil's going to get his extension. I don't think they're going to trade Laramie Tunsil. I think it would be kind of silly at this point, especially with where you're going to be and assuming that your quarterback's not going to have a new contract for at least another 4 or 5 years, or 3 if he's awesome and you end up getting that deal. But that won't really impact the short-term cap. You can overpay Laramie Tunsil at this point. You can overpay a lot of things. You can overpay in free agency. You could overpay Payne, and pay more than the market value. And I'm sure he'd be willing to come here. Houston's a cool city to live. D'Amico Ryans is a cool coach to play for. The organization's getting a lot cooler. And the reputation that we used to hear in the past, fair or not, seems to kind of be drifting away a little bit, rightfully so. And you're going to be more attractive for free agents. The no state income tax that we always hear about, it's going to be really interesting to see how they function. It's really going to be there's a lot of firsts here when it comes to the free agency. We've covered the quarterback position, we've covered the draft, we're covering a lot of ground today, but there's a lot of interesting things that we're going to learn as this offseason goes on. We're going to see how Nick Caserio handles having a lot of money to spend in free agency. Hasn't had that. It's easy for me to bitch about the quality of player, but when nobody wants to play here, it's not cool. And when you don't have a lot of money, it's going to be harder to get free agents unless you want to overpay for some guys that really aren't going to help you in the long scheme of things. So that's something you're going to learn about Nick Caserio. D'Amico Ryans. Is D'Amico Ryans, what's he going to want? What's he going to look like? How are he and Caserio going to work together? Is D'Amico Ryans going to have an impact to where some of these veterans want to come play? Some of these young guys want to come play ball. Are we all of a sudden going to see guys like, like when Tyrann Mathieu chose the Texans in 2018? Is that what we're going to see? I think it will happen. I think there's going to be a lot of guys that want to play for D'Amico Ryans and that want to play here. So we're going to learn about that. They're also going to tell you about the draft and free agency. I mean, they're not going to come out and say it, but I mean, if they bring in Derek Carr, or they bring in one of these veteran quarterbacks, are they telling us that they're not going to draft a quarterback? What are they telling us there? If they address the center position, is the center out? If they overpay for one of these free agent receivers, what are they telling us? If they don't trade Brandon Cooks, what are they telling us? So we're gonna learn a lot. We're about 11 weeks away from the NFL draft. Free agency is even closer than that. But we're going to learn a lot about these guys. I'm excited to do that. Like, I'm excited to do that because they have the right guys in place, we think. And they've shown that they can execute the process. They've shown that this job is appealing. They've shown that they can get the top candidate. Now, has Nick shown you that he can draft the right players? To be determined. To be determined. Have we seen what the dynamic's going to be between D'Amico and Nick? We have no idea. We don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. But going through the growing pains is going to be fun. There's going to be some mistakes Nick Caserio is going to make. There's going to be some stuff that he hits. There's going to be probably a Sunday in the upcoming year where D'Amico Ryans doesn't throw a challenge flag when he should, or D'Amico Ryans doesn't call a timeout when he should, or D'Amico Ryans isn't prepared for the other team, or he didn't prepare the way he should have. He's going to be prepared. Let me reword that. His game plan didn't match up with the opposing game plan the way that you would have wanted it to. But that's fun, man, because it's like watching someone grow. You're going to watch D'Amico Ryans grow, and you have a head coach that you want to grow with. That's not a guy who, God bless him, should have never been a head coach in David Culley. That's a guy who the NFL had passed him by a long, long time ago. And his recent coaching resume was such to where this was the only job he was going to get in Lovie Smith. You got a guy who everybody wanted, not someone that only would have been able to get that gig with you. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to grow. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what D'Amico's got. I'm excited to see what Nick's got. I'm excited for the draft. I'm excited for all this. It's going to be a process, but sign up for it, man. That's what you want. You're growing, man. You're back. A lot of people left. They're coming back. Welcome here. Locker Room, number one source for daily Texans digital content. Landry Locker, Sports Radio 610, and the Odyssey app, 10 to 2. You can catch me on there, 10 to 2 Central. David says, for sure, it's going to be a process, but I'm here for it. Different type of feels with this coach. And getting Young would be worth the wait. They got Bryce Young. I mean, come on. I mean, could you lay out, we've talked about the free agents. We've talked about the coaches, the front office. I mean, the business side, could they have been more happy than getting D'Amico Ryans in? You think if they get one of the faces of Dr. Pepper and a guy like Bryce Young who knows how to act like a professional and knows how to play the game and he's a hell of a player, you don't think they're going to be pumped for that? Man. I mean, just a quarterback in general, I'm sure for the business side would be cool. I don't know that they're like married to Bryce Young, but Bryce Young's already a brand. So you could figure that out. Brown Chubby asking, what do you think of drafted Jaron Hall in the 6th round with whoever we take at 2? 49ers taught us depth at QB position is super important. I don't know that the 49ers should have taught you that. I think anyone can teach you the depth is important. Look, if you want to kick the tires on someone in the 7th round or something because he's there, then go with it. But I don't think – I guess you can say the 49ers taught it, but I don't think it was like philosophical. I think they just looked up at the draft and said, oh, okay, this Brock Purdy guy, we had a 5th or 6th round grade on him, and he's here in the last pick of the draft. We don't think Jimmy's going to be back, and we have this Trey Lance guy. So they went there. I don't think it was like anything like philosophical or anything like that. But yeah, if you want to kick the tires on a quarterback in the 6th or 7th round, have at it. I don't know that Hall is going to be Brock Purdy, but be interesting. AGJ, would you trade down for the 2nd pick for more picks and still get a good QB? See, I don't want just a good QB. If it's coming down to you not thinking that this quarterback's going to be great with where they are in the process, then I don't want just a good QB. I want a great player. And I know that sounds cliche, but that I just don't. They'll get to a point, and they might get to a point like where the Colts are right now, where you've been in this quarterback purgatory for 5 years. A good quarterback might go a long way for them, so that they're not changing quarterbacks every effing year. And they've tried, at least. I mean, you can pick apart the holes, but Indianapolis has at least tried to fill the rest of the roster. And at a certain point, not too long ago, we thought they were a quarterback away. So if Indianapolis just wants to gets a good quarterback, that's cool. Texans, I don't think they need to do that. If they think that a quarterback is by far better than the others, and they might not, they might have them close. But if they do, not opposed to trading back, not opposed to not taking a quarterback. But like just take a quarterback to take one, I'm not in that. Would you trade down from 12, still can get a wide receiver or D lineman? That's Joe Nathan. Not the closer, I'm assuming. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to trading down 12. The dream scenario for anyone in that type of pick, and with that type of pick where you don't think that there's a number one wide receiver and your board isn't that far off, is either it's Levis or Richardson, they fall, and someone at like 20 or whatever, they decide, oh man, we want to kick the tires on this Will Levis and this Richardson guy. And assuming the Texans don't like him, you trade back, you probably get an extra first. And that's what happened with the Eagles. The Eagles have been masters at flipping picks. That's why they have the 10 pick in the draft. And they were in a pretty rough spot a few years ago. So if you want to do that, that's cool. The dream scenario around there is that you get in a spot where someone falls in love with one of those quarterbacks and boom. BZB713. Hey, Landry, what do you think if we just draft best available player and then we can use our 2 picks from next year to move up and get a quarterback? Don't hate it. If you don't love any of these quarterbacks, I don't hate it. And again, was this my mindset 2 months ago? F no. But I'm bought into D'Amico. I'm bought into the process, for better or worse. So I trust they can execute the process. If they don't do it, it's all good. Executed a perfect process with the coach. So, hey, if you want to draft the best player and you think that Jalen Carter or Will Anderson are A-plus players, go with it. And you got those 2 1s next year. Rod says AR-15 will be a bust. I want to see where he gets drafted. I have serious trust issues with mock draft quarterback predictions and really quarterback dialogue as a whole. I mean, some guys don't get too ridiculous with it, but I mean, we had Malik Willis getting mocked at 2 last year. Up till the final run of the draft. Like, I get that the mock draft is about, just creating a path, or sometimes it can just be to create dialogue. But I mean, like, some serious people were putting Malik Willis like number 2 to Detroit or to the Texans. He ended up going 3rd round. He ended up looking pretty bad. I just figure that you would have like a little bit better idea. So I have trust issues there. Joe says he's a Longhorns fan, just not sold on BJ. Not sold on Bijan as a 12th overall pick, or not sold on Bijan at all. Hugh Tex FL. Landry, what do you think about running back at 12 like Gibbs? I like Gibbs. I'm cool with wide receiver too. I think Gibbs is going to be available at 33. Maybe he goes at the end of the first round. Maybe. I just think he's going to be there at 33. I think he might fall even further than that. Man, he has Kamara vibes like crazy. Him and Bijan, those are 2 complete backs. Joe says, sorry for all the cussing earlier, just passionate about my Texans. You can curse however much you want, sir. This is a safe place. David, man, I was sold with Willis, but that's because I followed him before start of final year of college. Going back to before he transferred, I like Willis like as a guy. Remember what was that? What was it he did last year before the draft where like the internet was going nuts and people were talking about what a great young man he was, and that's who you want to be the face of your franchise. What was it he did? Malik Willis, talking about like draft stories. There's always like those draft stories that didn't he like give a homeless guy like some clothes or something like that, like he got a backpack or something. He was giving him that. I think that was it. Someone tell me in the comments. But I have serious trust issues with quarterback dialogue. Very, very much. David's asking about the wide receiver from Oklahoma. I'm assuming you're talking about Mims. I think Mims is going to be a stud. I think Mims is getting slept on. When you watched Mims with Caleb Williams he was making all types of plays. I remember that catch that he had against Texas that was just outrageous when Caleb Williams came in and brought him back from like down 20 or something like that. I think Mims is nice. There's a lot of nice receivers in that 2 range. I think Mims is going to have to be taken at 33 if you want to get him. But I think Mims is nice. Big fan of him. Huge fan of him. Nathan talking about the Malik. Yeah, he gave his swag bag from the combine to a homeless dude or lady. That's right. That's what it was. Zero tucks given. Mims is another slot guy. Nah, he's not. I mean, he can line up. Mims can line up in a lot of places. And again, I wouldn't just assume that Mechie's going to hold down that slot. And you pass on a guy that you think is going to be really, really good. So I wouldn't assume that. I said that earlier in the show, but I just don't, I don't think they need to worry about like anyone like holding down the depth chart there. I think Mims can probably line up a lot of paces. See, if you look at Mims' stats at OU though, I mean Venables just kind of screwed him. Marvin Mims is, let's see, his so last year he actually had 54 catches, which was a career high. He had 1,083 yards. So when Gabriel was in, he was nice. 6 touchdowns, but 9 his freshman year and then 5 in 2021. So you're talking about a guy who had 20 touchdowns in 3 years, 3 different quarterbacks, and he got better each year with yards. Kind of had a down 2021. So Mims, yeah, pretty small though. 5'11", 184. I would be down with it. But I'm down with all y'all. Appreciate you. Subscribe, like, Locker Room on YouTube. Awesome stuff going on tomorrow. Tomorrow on the show, we got a lot to get into about these. We'll probably get into this veteran QB conversation. We'll talk about a little bit what Gary Kubiak had to say, and we'll continue to look ahead to the draft. So I appreciate everyone for coming through. Subscribe, like, no matter what the Texans do, no matter what happens, we are all in this together. Have a good one.